I am a compulsive overeater and I am abstinent today on the gray sheet. I weigh and measure 3 meals a day from the gray sheet without exception. I commit my meals to my sponsor. I don't eat no matter what, and abstinence is the most important thing in my life without exception. And I'm here today to build my defense against the first bite. Um, so I know some meetings I go to, I don't know if this is one, but people give their abstinence date. So I'll do that just in case. My abstinent date is April 27th, 1983, through the grace of God. And if you're counting days, put that number out of your mind because it sounds impossible. And it is impossible on my own. When I first came in, I remember my first meeting vividly. I heard that you had to have 90 days to qualify at a meeting. And I thought, oh, these people do not eat the same way that I do. They don't think about food the same way that I do. They are not the same animal. And then I heard them say they had fear, doubt, and insecurity. And I thought, oh, these poor people are so sick. I just need to lose weight. So I had that, dual thinking of the typical addict, sicker than, better than, worse than, whatever. So anyway, how do you get to 40 years? How do you get to day 2? Do it for one day. Just do it for one day. And if you're starting off, you do it for one meal, literally one meal. That's all it is. We do it from meal to meal to meal. And I used to hear all the time when I came in, I got abstinent in Cambridge. I was working in Boston, and it was about a 10-minute train ride across the river. I was working with somebody a month after I was hired at a job that I was qualified for, but had a terrible interview. A gray sheet was hired, and she spotted me, and she gave me a gray sheet. In those days, gray sheets, they had them at the meetings. If you wanted one, you went up to the secretary and she'd give you one. And so now I know it's different. And so I took the gray sheet and I basically went on a diet. The one good thing I could say that I did and was my saving grace was that I went to a lot of meetings, and I know a lot of people who get the gray sheet might just leave. So it's a good thing. It doesn't work without a sponsor. That's the bottom line. It just doesn't. But anyway, I feel like a poster child for what not to do if you want to get abstinent. First of all, I'll just back up and say, I think I was a normal eater till I was about 8. And then I changed and I became a compulsive overeater. And from that day until I got abstinent, I was either on a diet, breaking a diet, reading about a diet. Every book, every newspaper, every magazine article, couldn't get through a cash register line with, because there's always some wacky newspaper there that says lose 10 pounds in 3 days without dieting, sign me up. And so I did all of that. And needless to say, none of them work. I might lose a little weight, but it never stayed off. That's what I mean by it didn't work. And it certainly never relieved the obsession. But there was something about that meeting that grabbed me, that first meeting, and I got hope. And I didn't have the language, so I didn't know that I had hope. But looking back on it, I know I had hope because I went back the next day and the next day. And that was in Cambridge, and there were a lot of meetings. This was 82, and there were a lot of meetings at that time in Cambridge. And I went all the time. And I didn't have a sponsor. I didn't think I needed that. And I couldn't imagine calling somebody every day at the same time and telling them what I was going to eat. That was my biggest secret. And I couldn't imagine not having the white stuff in my coffee because I thought, I don't drink that much coffee, so it's not fattening. What's the big deal? I was still in diet mode. And I did not want to do this in public because my boyfriend, who was now my husband, I knew he would flip out, which he did. He did. He was so angry. And so if I went out to a restaurant without him, I would weigh and measure. But when I was with him, I would not. So obviously not abstinent. Finally, after 9 months of doing this, one night I found myself eating out of the garbage. And I don't know if I heard that in a room or not, but I was home and nothing to eat because there was no junk food around. And I found myself eating out of the garbage. And I caught my reflection in the kitchen window, and it scared me to death. I stayed up all night. I didn't think I should bother anybody. It was 8 o'clock at night. So I stayed up all night. And then the next morning I called someone. I had one phone number, again, what not to do. And she told me she told me that she would sponsor me, but she couldn't talk then. She was on her way to work. Call her back. And in an hour. And in that hour, I did such a flip-flop. I thought, why am I calling her? I feel good. You know, the big book talks about the short memory. We forget the pain of a month ago or even a week ago. Well, I forgot the pain of an hour ago, how much pain I was. But thank God I called her back, and all she said was, "Give me your food." And um, and then I did, and then she said, "You are abstinent." I couldn't believe it that an honest to God GreySheeter said to me, "You are abstinent." I was wow. So it's one thing to get abstinent. We all know it's a whole nother thing to stay abstinent. Anybody can get abstinent. We just weigh and measure one meal, we're abstinent. Even if we binge right afterwards, we had an abstinent meal. So how do you get from breakfast to lunch and lunch to dinner, dinner to breakfast? That was always the hardest part for me. Well, 4 o'clock was usually the start of my binges. Um, because every day before I got abstinent, I would wake up and think, today's the day I'm going to diet, exercise, take vitamins, and be healthy. And I believed that every day for 2 years. And then at 4 o'clock every day, without exception, the disease would start talking and it would say, you can start tomorrow. And I believed it every day, I'll start tomorrow. And that went on and on and on. 2 solid years. I mean, it was years of misery before that, but the last 2 years were just awful. Anyway, so how do you stay abstinent? And looking at my own, what helped me, the best thing that helped me was meetings. Meeting makers make it. Even now, if I go for too long of a stretch, like I was down in Florida recently, and I think I went for 4 days without a meeting. I have never done that in my entire abstinence, going that long. And I was crazy. I was getting cranky. So I can't do that. I mean, I can skip a day, maybe two, but I cannot stretch it more than 2 meetings without a day. And in those days, I was going every day because I really firmly believed in the 24-hour reprieve. I still do. And I felt like I was on fumes when I was walking into the building for the meeting. If my gas tank was empty, I was on fumes. And I also envisioned, like, in the circus, like the flying lady on the trapeze, that at the meeting started at 5:30, and at 5:30, the net was gone. And so to feel safe, I had better get in there and get to that meeting. And I'll tell you, a lot of times I would fall asleep. A lot of people did. The room was so crowded, and there would be a lot of people on the floor, and a lot of us would just be zonked out, so tired from that early days and just zonked out. But I would wake up about 20 minutes after the meeting started, and then I was able to stay awake after a while. But meetings. The next thing is phone calls. I remember when calling somebody one night, I just wanted to eat. And as soon as I made the call, and she talked me through it. Well, what time is dinner? And can you have a cup of coffee now? Can you get a diet soda now? It was, I couldn't, I mean, I thought she was brilliant. And those things really got me through. And especially the first thing she said was, well, what's for dinner? I lit up like a Christmas tree. Well, I'm going to have 4 ounces of this, a cup of that. And I felt better. And that's really what I wanted. I couldn't not, and I used to think that this was like news, that nobody who was doing reishi died from starvation between lunch and dinner. I really didn't know that, because when the urge to eat hit, I felt like I was going to die. I really felt like that. And it was shocking to get through the experience of not eating and not dying. And the more I got through that, every time we get through that, we build abstinent muscle, and the muscle gets stronger. And those thoughts come less often and they become less intense. The danger on the other side, when you have a little time, is that the disease will start talking differently. The disease will start saying, "No, it's okay if you don't go to the meeting." Oh, like the other night, I went to measure my vegetable, and I had committed a vegetable. My daughter-in-law said, "Oh, you can have mine. I'm not going to eat them. They were raw, and I was going to cook them." I put my hand into the bag, and they were so slimy. They felt like worms. It was disgusting. So I was gonna I knew I had to, call and make a change. I reached my sponsor and got the voicemail, and I thought, oh, maybe I could just leave it. And so that's not what I do. I've always been told, in the old days when we didn't have answering machines, just keep calling. But now I do is I make 3 calls, and if I don't reach somebody live after that, then I can call my sponsor back and leave it on my sponsor's machine. So I need my sponsor to keep me in check. The other thing I do with my sponsor is for the first, I don't know, 10 years or so, I wouldn't miss a meeting without telling my sponsor. First of all, calling my sponsor, and is this okay to miss a meeting? And then after that, when I had my kids, it was starting to, if I missed a meeting, I would call my sponsor and say when I was going to make it up within the week so that my numbers don't go down. And I still do that. And it's not a requirement. I need somebody else. Somehow between me and God, it's okay. I can justify anything. But if I tell my sponsor I missed a meeting or I'm not going to get there tonight, and this is what I'll do so that I get to a meeting, because if I miss meetings, because so many people, it doesn't matter how much time people have. I've seen it time and again. Without meetings, people start to drift and drift. This becomes okay, that becomes okay. And it's just easy, like sliding out the door before you even realize it sometimes. Just, oh, I don't know what happened. How many times have I heard that? And it's very scary. And I really appreciate their honesty. The other thing, when I came in, there was a woman in Cambridge named Sally, her husband George. They're the ones who started the program. And Sally used to say, it's a hand to mouth disease. If I don't put my hand to my mouth, I'm not going to eat. Now that seems very obvious. But again, that was big news. Of course, I have been known to stick my face in a bowl, but we won't go there right now. If I don't put my hand to my mouth, I won't eat. That was so brilliant. It was so simple, not easy, but that's what's great about this program, simple things. If I don't put my hand to my mouth, I'm not going to eat. The other thing that was very helpful was that the craving, the awful urge, like if I'm going to die, that will pass. I was told, time it. It won't go more than 20 minutes. It'll come back and then time it again. And each time you get through it, I can know that I can live through it and that it will pass. I don't have to live forever in that awful gripped feeling. It will pass. And there are things I can do. The other thing I was told was, don't entertain food thoughts. As soon as a food thought comes into my mind, just banish it immediately. Do not entertain it even for a minute. So along with that, if to this day, if an ad comes on the TV, I turn the channel, or on the radio in my car, I turn the channel. Because I have to remember, it's not just that I've been on a diet, for a long time and it's worked. I have a disease, and I envision my brain being covered with barbed wire mesh, and that this little thought will catch on it. And then when I have a vulnerable moment, it's going to burr its way into my head. A few years ago, I had a cold, and I was, up in the middle of the night. I made a hot cup of tea because that helps my coughing. And but I was sitting in the kitchen alone at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and this, just like in the big book, this thought just floated into my head. It would be nice to have a little something. And all I can say is thank God for a lot of meetings under my belt that I recognized that instantly. I said, oh my God, what's that? Where did that come from? And then I thought, it came from me. I'm a compulsive overeater. It would be nice to have a little something, but I could never have a little something. I never did have a little something. So it really kind of shook me up. And I really appreciated the thing about building my defense against the first bite. The other image I can give you is that I have a glaucoma. It's treated, it's under control, thank God. But I do have a tiny bit of loss of vision at like 11 o'clock in my left eye. And I got into a very minor, thank God, fender bender in a parking lot one time because I was pulling in, and you look, and sometimes you might think, oh, it's going to be a tight squeeze. I thought plenty of room, no problem. And I just into the next car. I really did not see that I was that close to that car. I didn't see it because that part in my brain doesn't work. And that's what it's like with the food. And so now I do things, I really look like this and this and this if I'm parking.
1 minute left, Kathy.
Thanks, Doreen. So I really appreciate what it means to have the defense against that first bite, that blind spot, that strange mental blind spot. So I have to protect myself from that. I would say, the food is delicious. It's plentiful. I know it's hard to ask for help. I know it's hard to talk to people and get recipes or whatever, but I would say I was told to eat food that looks like food. Don't eat pretend food. Don't make recipes that are too complicated. And also to love my food. Greasy proteins, orange vegetables, I love that. And just don't worry about the weight. The weight will come off. I promise you, it will come off. just weigh and measure my food, weigh and measure my food, weigh and measure my food. And it's such relief. It's hard to even believe sometimes that it's such relief, but it is. So thanks everybody for being here. And thank Doreen for timing and everybody for service. And I don't eat no matter what. Thank you.